Sometimes there's a good side to social media, and then there's a downside. And in the sport of boxing, one of the things that have always been very respected about the sport is that the fighters would fight and they'll do all their talking in the ring. Muhammad Ali came along and changed all of that when he brought the antics of Gorgeous George to boxing. Gorgeous George being a famous wrestler who had charisma, pizzazz, and flash. That's what Ali brought. And ever since the greatest left the scene, there have been others vying to take his place through talk, conversation, interviews. And here, the latest offering in the sport of boxing, one Filip Hrgovic, who has decided to open up and discuss his thoughts about Anthony Joshua and what he has and hasn't done correct in his career. Let's talk about what Mr. Hrgovic had to say about AJ. According to an article in Boxing Scene earlier today, the link will be in the description. Today being January 16th, 2023. Filip Hrgovic offered up Anthony Joshua was a beast, but he started to box too much. Wow. This coming from a fellow heavyweight who has had his struggles in the division trying to be a boxer puncher, where his most premium offering is his size. Hrgovic, like Anthony Joshua, is one of these modern day big men in the sport. Standing roughly 6'6", like Anthony Joshua, he comes in over 250 pounds a number of times himself. But it's not even about that size. It's about being able to fight, box, because the best of the skilled men typically can get the job done in the ring through relying on what they've learned, the tutelage, being directed and instructed in the gym. Now, Hrgovic from Croatia has represented in the Olympics. So he has an understanding of what that really means to have a skill set. But in his own career, he has shown himself to be nothing more than a bruising, plodding, big guy. And once a fighter who is capable and has a skill set can deal with that, he'll run into trouble, just like Anthony Joshua did. Now, the article from Boxing Scene goes on to state, though rivals, Filip Hrgovic had a healthy dose of both respect and fear for former unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. While the former may still be present, the latter ostensibly dissipated for Hrgovic. Joshua, who's 33, once stood as the proud holder of the WBA, WBO, IBO, and IBF heavyweight titles. However, following consecutive shortcomings at the hands of Alexander Usyk, Joshua's reign at the top of the heavyweight mountain came to an end. Now notice, they only mentioned Usyk's victories over Joshua, but he did also lose to Andy Ruiz Jr. in what a lot saw as a upset at the time. But if Joshua were a more complete boxer, maybe even that would not have occurred. So Hrgovic has to take note of what's really transpiring in this sport, and he's going to have to watch out for himself as well. Now, Hrgovic, the article says, at least thus far has remained true to himself. The 30-year-old from Croatia has mostly run through his competition, stumping some of the more durable heavyweight contenders around. That's not true. He has not fought one guy in the top 10. He has not. So those men that he has defeated have been fringe contenders, including his struggle against Zhilei Zhang, in his last outing, a fight that many people felt like Zhang may have won that fight. That fight took place in August of 2022, and surprisingly, Hrgovic hasn't fought since. I wonder why. Because they're looking for some competition that may not be that great of competition. Hrgovic does not have a lot of skills himself, and against Zhang, who was big and strong enough to endure whatever Hrgovic had to output physically, because Hrgovic has been a great deal larger in mass than most of his opponents. Well, he couldn't push Zhang around, and Zhang was right there to hit him back, and they fought in a hard-fought fight that saw scorecards of 115 to 112 twice and 114 to 113. And so many others thought that that would have gone the other way. Hrgovic came out of that fight looking worse for wear, not as far as being beaten up physically, but psychologically, because he wasn't accustomed to someone being able to handle him physically. So it's quite interesting to hear him speak on fighters and, not being a boxer or being a boxer or what have you, as he's judging Joshua. Maybe he needs to study his own film and tape and not worry about Anthony Joshua, because he's the type of fighter that Anthony Joshua typically has no problem against. Anthony Joshua typically has trouble with men who are shorter in height and dimension and smaller than he. But those who are of his size, if not a little bit bigger, AJ has had no problem with the big guys. He's knocked most of them out. So I don't understand where Hrgovic is coming with this philosophy on Joshua was a beast until he started to box. Boxing is what you rely on. Boxing is what carries you through at the end of the day. Boxing is what gives you the opportunity to be more flexible and be successful against opponents with varying styles. Now, Hrgovic, whose record presently is 15-0 with 12 KOs, has, like I said, been on the hanger since that August fight against Zhang. Now, there's been talks of he facing certain guys, but nothing is coming to fruition. Now, I can understand that some people may not want to face him because he's an imposing big guy, and they may be waiting for title shots with whatever's going to go down between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. But let it be said that the division will move forward, whether Hrgovic is a part of it or not. And I am of the belief that a quality boxing fighter can deal with his type anytime, because he showed me against Zhang that he's not necessarily the most strong mentally in the ring. Now, I've often said, prove me wrong, but I saw what I saw. Zhang was the one who may require a little bit better conditioning, but with his physicality and his ability, he can go places still. He should have gotten that victory. As far as Hrgovic, what are you going to do when a guy can take the best punch you have to offer? You're 30 years old, and there's always young men coming up. We have a young man here in the U.S. called Jared Big Baby Anderson, who will never give you the type of let up that Mr. Zhang gave you after getting you in trouble several times in your 12-round fight against him. Anderson is a huge finisher and knows how to go after a guy and put punches together. Will Hrgovic be able to stand up to a fighter like Anderson? I would love to see it. But one of the things that we still have to talk about is the fact that he is not, again, mentally the toughest guy out there. He's not. And he can pretend as much as he wants. But as Mike Tyson has often said, and I have re-quoted, tough guys get hurt in this sport. So, the article goes on to say, now as the 30-year-old Croatian continues to closely examine the overall career of Joshua, he has a difficult time recognizing the fighter that stands before him. In addition to the former Olympic gold medalist opting to box on the outside against Usyk, the two-time champion remained uncommitted in a singular coach due to a combination of his lack of aggression and propensity to soak up knowledge. Hrgovic is convinced that Joshua has simply lost his way. I'm careful not to learn too much and become something that I am not. Take away my advantages, said Hrgovic during an interview with True School Sports. I think that happened to Anthony Joshua. He was a beast. He was a knockout artist. Then he started to learn too much about boxing, and he started to box too much. Overthinking. Wow. Interesting. Well, if you're not a great thinker in there, Mr. Hrgovic, what will happen is you will get your dinner handed to you. But there's supposed to be a marriage of the psychological and the physical, along with the tools that have been cultivated to allow you to go to work. If in any of these areas, specifically the psychological aspect, lack, you will fall short of the target and goal. You have to remember that. Boxing is a psychological game of people who have physical tools and skills. Maybe you need to go back to class. Anthony Joshua is going to be who he's going to be, and it has nothing to do with what your observations are. It's much deeper rooted than that. I talk about that often as well. But these are my thoughts on what Filip Hrgovic had to offer, and fighters like him, because they can sit from afar and talk about the guys who have had their shortcomings. In the meanwhile, he has yet to address his own limitations. For a 6'6" guy and not much in the stamina department, and thinking all brute and power is going to get you through, you got another thing coming. This is Stormy B-Man. shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what you think about this editorial. What do you think about what Filip Hrgovic had to say about Anthony Joshua? There's an old saying, that's the pot calling the kettle black. And maybe Hrgovic will realize this if he gets off the stove. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.